May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be pleasing in your sight, my rock and my redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
You may be seated. So each of the weeks during the season of Lent, we are introduced to a person who has an encounter, a life-changing encounter with Jesus. Last week, we met a man who is a teacher of the law, who should have known all the right answers, and who went to find Jesus under the cloak of darkness in the middle of the night so that no one would see that he was going to meet him. And this week we meet a woman, in fact quite the opposite, a woman who really doesn't know what's going on, and who meets Jesus, stumbles upon Jesus really, in broad daylight, hiding in the noonday sun. I don't know if you have a large lawn, maybe or with a riding lawnmower, but if you do, you probably know that the best time to mow the lawn is not at the hottest point of the afternoon, unless maybe you have a pool and some sunscreen. But if you had a neighbor that you really wanted to avoid, and he mowed his lawn in the morning, you may be a little bit more likely to push back the time you mow your lawn. And I think something like that's going on in the story today, where this woman, she doesn't just want to be not seen by one neighbor, but she doesn't want to be seen by anybody. So she goes down to the well, we're in Palestine here, in the middle of the day, the hottest time of the day, just to avoid being seen. And although she goes down to the well with an empty jar, I can imagine that she's carrying something really heavy. Something that she spent a lot of time constructing really nice masks to wear so that people don't necessarily see it. A nice mask that keeps her human interactions buffered a little bit. And she goes down to the well, expecting not to be seen, and encounters a man. Not just any man, a Jewish man, a man that shouldn't really be talking to her. And I'm sure that she's going to go about her business knowing that Jews don't usually talk to Samaritans, but something changes that, and he asks her for water. Now, something I love about the scriptures is that they've been read for thousands of years, and every time that they're read, every generation and every context, we see something a little bit different, and the story comes alive to us in a different way. And when I read this text, I think, like most of us, it's easy to read it and to think, man, Jesus came at this woman with like some pretty loaded guns and burst open all this shame and this guilt, and it seems like this really intense drama. But I hear this story read a different way. I hear it almost as a sitcom with a bit of awkward silence and then some canned laughter. The audience has a good chuckle. And I want you to, this morning, as we read the story or retell this story a little bit, to imagine with me that this played out a little bit differently. And David read it really beautifully, but we're going to try and maybe uncover something a little different in the text this morning. So this woman is being talked to by this man, and it's not like he's talking at her, he's talking to her, which is kind of strange. And the comedy routine really starts when the woman says, you know, I don't have a husband to bring back here. And Jesus says, oh, of course you don't have a husband. Girl, you've had 5 husbands, and the guy you're with now, he's not your husband. And you're really not fooling anyone with this one. And I'm sure, like, she is taken aback a little bit, and she quips back and she says, oh, bravo, you're a real prophet. You know, you did some Nancy Drew work, a little investigation. Who's your intel on this one? The whole town knows what I've done. And so she's, in this moment, she's kind of diverted the attention, and she does what we all do. She decides to talk about mountains and religion and politics, because it's easier to talk about the weather than what's really going on, and when someone makes us feel that uncomfortable, we want to talk about anything else. And so she puts the walls back up and the mask back on. And then there's this shift as Jesus responds to her question. And it's a shift that moves from talking about her to talking about hope. And he says that there's a day coming, actually there's a day that's come, when this is all going to make sense, when everything will be set back to the way it should be, and it won't matter whether you're on this mountain or whether you're down in that city, because what will matter is how we worship and understand the one true God. And I can picture in my head this feeling of, I know this guy. You know that feeling when you're with someone and you feel like for some reason you know them, like there's a bit of an element like, I can trust this guy. And it's almost like Jesus is saying, I know you, and you don't know it yet, but you know me. And of all the people that would know what it feels like, I mean, this is a man who's been rejected by his entire hometown. When he walks through town, people laugh or they whisper. A lot of people want this guy dead already. He's not a stranger to some of this feeling that the woman has inside of always being looked at. And so she says this thing that I think we often can miss, and she says, well, the Messiah is coming, and we do this too. We can agree to disagree, because when he comes back, he'll set it all straight. So for now, you leave your stuff, and I'll leave you alone, and you leave me alone. We can do our own thing. And when the Messiah comes back, it'll all be set straight. And then there's that moment where we can hear the gears turning in her head, and we can see Jesus kind of leaning in waiting for the aha moment. And I think by the time that he finishes saying, lady, you've been talking to that guy, I think she gets it. And suddenly all of the things that were hidden become crystal clear. And there's something that changes in this woman in that moment. So we're in the middle of a season of Lent, and Lent we often think of as this season of looking inward, of introspection. Maybe you gave up chocolate or donuts or something else. And the idea is that as we cut out some of the things in our lives, we can see a little bit deeper. We can confront what's going on down there so that when we get to Holy Week, we're a little bit more prepared for the coming of Easter. And with this woman, as she looks and is confronted by the good, the bad, and the ugly, for the first time, she's not just looking in the mirror, but she's looking through the eyes of an old friend. And as she looks at what is there, the walls burst open and the masks fall off, and she's looking at something else. And she drops her jar, she leaves it at the well, she goes back to the village that she came from, and she tells them a story. She says, that man that I met down there told me everything that I've ever done. And now I can imagine them laughing. Everybody knows what you've done. But she says, no, I'm not here to tell you about a prophet, because anybody knows that. No, he told me everything and then showed me what it is to be with another human being. Showed me what it is to look past all of that. And that was the story that people wanted to get to know more about. So when maybe you do too, I hope that you do too, during the season of Lent, look inward, and we are confronted by that good, the bad, and the ugly, and we take a good look at the well-constructed masks that we wear in our interactions with one another. I hope that we are able to look at them through the eyes of that old friend. I hope that we're able to look at them with those eyes so that the walls can fall down and we can see the world, so that we can see the seeds that have been planted and that are growing up, so that we can see the harvest that is just ready, the fields are ripe, and that we can see that there is a lot of work to do. There's only one reason that I'm here, and it's because I have a story. My story is that I met a man and he knew everything. He talked to me and still talks to me like we're old friends. And I don't know why, but I'm not thirsty anymore. So won't you come and see? Amen.